Welcome everyone to my latest post-playthrough thoughts and review video. In this video, as usual, I'll be taking you guys through my thoughts and history with the game we completed together on stream. Today, our topic is Bayonetta, a high-octane, action-packed experience by Platinum Games that we finished last April. I'm trying to give you guys a bit more of an informed opinion by getting into some specifics, and though I intend to go into a little more detail than usual, I'll still try to keep spoilers to a minimum. But of course, just through showing footage and discussing the game, there will be some minor spoilers, so be warned about those. With that being said, here are my thoughts. I have to be honest, I have virtually no history with any facet of Bayonetta. I have no history with her series, which, makes sense given that the Bayonetta franchise is relatively new in the grand scheme of things. I've never played anything from Platinum Games before, so I don't know how their style of game works for me personally. And on top of all of that, I've never even played a hack-and-slash game before. The genre is completely unknown to me. When you look at my history, there's really nothing that should have led to me picking up Bayonetta. This, of course, isn't to say that I've never heard of Bayonetta. But I really didn't feel like purchasing any M-rated games, even in high school, and I understood Bayonetta at the time to have an overtly sexual nature. Not only was my younger self not remotely interested in that sort of thing, but trying to explain the game to my parents would have been an absolute nightmare, given that her clothes are made of hair. But take a wild guess as to what sparked my interest in Bayonetta. Yeah, of course, it's Smash Bros. I watched Bayonetta's reveal live and shouted the loudest "WHAT?" that I can remember from during Smash 4's lifespan. It came so far out of left field. I played Bayonetta a little bit in both Smash games that she appeared in, and I got to thinking, Platinum Games undeniably makes good shit. My brother was a really big fan of the Wonderful 101, and my friend Jacob considers Nier Automata one of his favorite games of all time. Knowing this and seeing how fun Bayonetta's personality was, I knew it was time to give it a shot. I'll always consider the Nintendo exclusivity of Bayonetta to be one of the strangest developments I've seen with gaming. A violent game with moderate sexual themes that originally appeared on anything but Nintendo consoles got its sequel on Wii U, and now Bayonetta 3 is coming to the Switch. Strange, but at least this ended up working out in my favor. Every copy of Bayonetta 2, both on Wii U and the Switch port, came with a downloadable copy of the original, since the core Nintendo market is the most likely to not have a Sony or Microsoft console. So when my brother got me Bayonetta 2 for my birthday last year, I got the original as well. The stage was set. It was finally time for me to dive into the very new experience. Did Bayonetta work for me, or was there a reason I avoided this type of game for so many years? Bayonetta immediately stands out as a very stylish game. Its opening moments up to the end of the prologue let you know exactly what kind of game you're playing. There's even a dramatic cutscene before you even reach the main menu. Within the first half hour, you can tell that this game is dramatic, funny, and oh, so extra. Bayonetta's stylish side is predominant in its presentation. The soundtrack has some jazzy elements, the cutscenes have the sexy element of film noir without the somber overtones, complete with semi-still images and film reel borders on some scenes. Bayonetta herself is cocky and doesn't take herself too seriously, which actually causes her fan-servicey design to feel appropriate rather than creepy. The silly, sexy dynamic actually augments the narrative intensity when the game shows its serious side too. Bayonetta taking things seriously, unexplained voices and visual effects stripping away the style, and silence are all used to augment tension because it's so different from what you come to expect from the game. Later on in the game, both the serious and stylish sides are used in tandem to great effect. I really love how the narrative and audiovisual presentation benefit from each other in this way. The soundtrack is immensely high quality in this game. Tracks in this game encompass a wide array of moods and styles, from the traditional European instrumentation heard in Battle for the Umbra Throne, to the smooth jazz at the Gates of Hell. Throughout all of this, various motifs and piano keep the soundtrack cohesive. As the game progresses, the battle themes ramp up until every fight feels like a final boss fight. I feel as though the music reflects the progression of the game magnificently. As things take a more serious turn, the instrumentation shifts to a more orchestral performance, and by late game it is also likely to accompany an increase in players' skill. making you really feel like you too can adopt Bayonetta's cocky attitude in a fight, until you get hit at least. My personal favorite track? Red and Black. It's a classic, though the Gates of Hell isn't too far behind. Graphically, I think the game has aged fairly well. Character models can look a tad blurry at times, but on Switch, nothing's too dark and everything looks fine. Some of the angel designs in this game are phenomenal and interesting, while others are a bit silly, but I didn't have a problem with those. The blurriness can honestly be a valid criticism, as there are instances in which the edges aren't as sharp as you may like, but in my experience that doesn't obfuscate what's happening on screen anywhere near enough to hinder your reactions. And neither do the particle effects, which is good since I am a sucker for particle effects. I think Bayonetta is a perfectly fine game graphically. Nothing mind-blowing of course, but solid for the time. I spent some time earlier when discussing the game's presentation praising Bayonetta's narrative, and I'd like to reiterate that before criticizing it. The narrative starts out with an interesting premise and ends off really engaging and exciting. Throughout the game's levels, lore can be found and read at your leisure, revealing more about the world's history without explicitly telling you, though the most important parts are addressed in cutscenes as well. However, between the introduction and the point where the story really gets rolling, I found myself getting concerned. Bayonetta's story appears to have a dead zone where things aren't really properly explained and nothing is really happening, which lost me for a while and made me fear I wouldn't enjoy the game as much. Fortunately, this feeling vanishes about a third of the way through the game. Bayonetta has a very arcadey style, with each fight of each chapter being graded on a scale based on your score from the fight, and then the entire level being graded after that. If you're doing a casual playthrough like I was, then this has absolutely no bearing on the narrative or the gameplay, but I will admit that getting a nice shiny trophy instead of a stone statue at the end of the level for once is a nice confidence booster. You have plenty of items you can buy at the Gates of Hell, the shop you can visit between every level, and once in a while mid-level, but using them reduces your score as much as a death does, which is significant, so the game does dissuade you from using them. I come from a weird perspective, where although I knew going in that I don't intend to be the best Bayonetta player, and that I ultimately didn't care about my score too much, I'm naturally competitive and put my best effort into everything, which led to some frustrations for one reason. Bayonetta is a really hard game. This means that some fights become a game of learning through failure, which is fun, but it can be really demotivational when you finally complete that difficult challenge you were struggling on, only to be greeted by a stone trophy at the end. I have to admit I got pretty close to raging at some of the late game boss fights, which are so mind-numbingly powerful, but calming down and learning their patterns led to a very satisfying victory. With the arcade-style setup, Bayonetta obviously emphasizes its combat, which is really fun. Bayonetta has plenty of combos at her disposal, which may be useful in differing situations, some of which are harder to execute than others, but if you can pull them off and chain them, you're rewarded with a far better combo score. Bayonetta also has plenty of special moves which can be executed with special inputs after unlocking them from a shop, and when you get really good at managing your combat presence, you can incorporate a dodge offset, which lets you continue a combo mid-dodge. I don't think I pulled off this technique successfully during my entire playthrough. On top of that, different enemies require different dodge timings and are susceptible to different combos. So although you may find your bread and butter attacks, you're still encouraged to experiment and optimize throughout the entire game. Bayonetta has several weapons at her disposal which can be assigned to her hands and feet. Your weapon combination changes your moveset. I stuck with the quad guns for most of my runs since I was most familiar with that style from Smash Bros, and I didn't want to be mediocre at many weapon sets instead of good at one or two. But I can see the weapon combinations lending themselves well to replayability. Speaking of replayability, it's obvious that the game was meant to be played more than once. The story made a lot more sense to me rewatching my footage while preparing for this review, so you'd get a lot more enjoyment out of the narrative a second or third time through perhaps. Subsequent playthroughs also allow you to carry over your special moves and upgrades on a harder difficulty, and the game's point system clearly encourages players to go through the game again to improve their performance. Bayonetta isn't really a long game either, clocking in at just under 14 hours for my playthrough, so I'd imagine veterans could just blaze through the game, experimenting with new weapon combinations, going for the pure platinum rewards in every level, and searching for the lore and secrets they missed. I can't say an immediate second playthrough of this game is for me. but I can definitely understand the appeal and why the game was designed such. In conclusion, Bayonetta is a tremendously fun and stylish experience with excellent presentation, fun, rewarding, and difficult combat, and a strong narrative that stagnates a bit in the middle but ends spectacularly. Bayonetta showed me that games of this genre genuinely become more fun when they're hard, otherwise they devolve into button mashing. I felt such a rush from improving my skills in this game, and I managed to beat one of the hardest fights before the final chapter in only 2 attempts. I'm quite proud of that one. Overall, I can consider Bayonetta a game that doesn't quite appeal to me 100%, but one that's very clearly well made and one that I enjoyed quite a bit. While Bayonetta didn't encourage me to play it again immediately, and while I don't foresee a second playthrough within the next couple of years despite its design, I'm definitely interested in playing through its sequel, and hopefully some of my skills will transfer over so I can enjoy it even more. I want to thank each and every one of you for watching this video. Bayonetta is not a game for everyone, but if you think you'd like to take on a challenge, I'd recommend that you play it. If you've played Bayonetta for yourself, and you disagree with something I said, or if you'd just like to make fun of me for earning only 1 gold and 1 silver trophy among a sea of stones, I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments. If this is the first you've seen of my content, you can find me at twitch.tv/turkeysub23, and for those of you who watched me struggle through Bayonetta, thank you for cheering me on. Have a wonderful day, take care, and don't forget to dance.